think I said that we would pick up with Act 5. Am I correct there? Anybody remember? Now let's back up. We'll pick up with that. I know we've talked about some of this in Act 4. But let's go ahead and pick up page 1585 and Oberon Speech on that page, beginning around line 41 or so, where he addresses Puck. Titania's asleep on the stage. He addresses Puck, and he tells us, that is, he gives us background information that we haven't seen, okay? What happened as a result of putting the love juice into Tanya's eyes, not only her falling in love with Bottom, but in the meantime, how he got the little changeling boy from her. In other words, he got what he wanted. At the beginning of the play, when we're first introduced to Puck and, Oberon and Titania, we find out they're arguing over this changeling boy. He wants him to be in his train, she wants to keep him, etc., etc. And he says, you're not going to leave this wood until I get what I want from you, okay? So, he's gotten what he wants. And he tells Puck, beginning line 55, 56, 57. And now I have the boy. I will undo this hateful imperfection of her eyes. Now, if you remember Tuesday, we began by discussing Helena's speech, her soliloquy, at the end of Act 1. Act 1, Scene 1, where she talks about how the eye, essentially, the mind of the lover, can make beautiful what it looks at, even if that thing is base and low. Okay? Notice what he's saying here. Now I have the boy, I will undo this hateful imperfection of her eyes. Why is that an imperfection? Because if your sight, if the person in love is what makes the thing beautiful, how can this be an imperfection?
Because it's a spell.
Louder?
It's a spell.
It's a spell. It's not real.
Right.
She doesn't really love Bottom. She's been, to use language that Aegeus uses in his opening speech about his daughter and Lysander, she's been bewitched. Okay? She's had this love juice put on her eyes. So, he's going to remove that love juice so that she will see as she is supposed to see. So, he says, and gentle Puck, take this transformed scalp from off the head of the Athenian swain. That is, make Bottom as he is supposed to be. Right? That he awaking when the other do, may all to Athens back again repair, that is return. And think no more of this night's accidents, but as the fierce vexation of a dream. And there's our title of the play. It is a Midsummer Night's Dream. Okay? It's the fierce vexation of a dream. Have you ever woken up from a dream and immediately upon waking you're not sure whether or not that was real or not? That's what he's talking about. Okay? But notice he says, think no more of this night's. I've been teaching this play for 20 years, and I don't think I've ever picked up on this, on the use of this word. On this night's accidents. How do you define an act? What is an accident? You get in a car accident. What is it? Something you didn't mean to do. It's something that is mistaken. It's a mistaken happening, right? You didn't intend for that to occur. That's the modern meaning. Now, it had that meaning in Shakespeare's day, and if that's the meaning, then how does that apply within the play? Is it an accident that Bottom's head is transformed into an ass? That is it something caused by Bottom? No, he has nothing to do with that. Okay? Is it, man, this chronic tonsillitis is killing me. Is it an accident that Titania falls in love with Bottom? No, it's not. Is it an accident that Hermes and Lysander run off to the forest? No, it's not. So it has to have another meaning. There must be something else to that word. And there is. It has a much, much older meaning. In that older meaning, I've got to put another word up beside it in order for all of this to make sense. And I need to get a different marker. That older meaning of accidents is appearance. But there, it's not spelled. That is, usually when it has this meaning, it's not spelled this way. It is spelled this way, with a C rather than a TS. But there wasn't normalized spelling in Shakespeare's day. Shakespeare spelled his name, in the signatures that we have, he spelled his name 3 different ways. Because there wasn't one given accepted spelling for it. All right, let me get a marker. Hopefully this one works better. So, appearance. So what am I talking about? This. Okay. What is this? Anybody? Piece of paper. Okay. That is its accidents. It appears, right, as a piece of paper. What is its substance? What's its essence? What is paper made out of? It's not made out of paper. Paper's made out of wood pulp. So its real accidents is cellulose. It's wood fiber. Okay? So that's the substance of this. Its accidents, how it appears, is paper. And you could even go, you could take its appearance even more than that. Because this is what? For you today. It's not just paper. This is one of the quizzes. So this is your quiz. So its appearance is as paper, and its appearance gets even more refined to quiz. Okay? This. What's its accidents? What does it appear as?
Plastic.
Plastic bottle. It's a bottle, right? What's its substance? Plastic, but even that's not far enough back. What's its real substance? What's its real essence? What's it really made out of?
Atoms.
Okay, that's taking it all the way down to its bare. Let's go a little bit forward from that. Petroleum. This is oil. So you want to divest, of petroleum, oil, fossil fuels and everything. That means you're getting rid of all of these. It also means you're getting rid of much of what you're wearing right now. Because that probably has some kind of mixture of polyester. That's petroleum. It's dead dinosaur. And dead organic matter. Okay? So, that's the substance of this. Go back to what he says. And think no more of this night's accidents. This. What's he saying about these appearances? It's not the real substance. That's why he says, and think of them as no more than a dream. What is the substance? And we could go off into, psychology. What is the substance of your dreams? The appearance is the dream you actually have. What's the substance of it? That is, what's the cause? What's the essence? What lies behind the dreams? Just like the other day when we were talking about shadows. What lies behind the shadow? Well, it's the real solid thing the light shines on that causes. So, let him think no more of this night's accidents, but as the fierce vexation of a dream. And what happens when you wake up from a dream, and maybe you're troubled by it as the day goes on? You forget the dream. The dream goes away. It doesn't really have any bearing on your life. But first I will release the fairy queen. Okay? So he squeezes another juice on her eyes that counteracts the love juice and says, be as thou wast wont to be. See as thou wast wont to see. Want means as you used to. Be as you used to be. Used to be when? In the first act? No. How do we know? How's their relationship working for them in the first act? She tells us, I've refused his bed. He calls her a rash wanton. And I think you've got a gloss that says wanton means headstrong. That's one meaning. Wanton also means slut. Okay? Because he's going to say, I know the only reason you're here is because Theseus is here. And she's going to say, I know the only reason you're here is because Hippolyta's here. Okay? So, I mean, they're going at it hammer and tongs. They're not happy with each other. He says, be as thou wast wont to be. Before we started arguing over this foolish child. See as thou wast wont to see. That is, see me as you used to see me. Not as Lord, not as master, as husband, as lover, as bedsharer. Dian's bud over Cupid's flower hath such force and blessed power. Now, my Titania, wake you, my sweet queen. And if I were directing this, and I've seen it done this way, he squeezes the juice and he says these words, okay? And she opens her eyes and the first thing she sees is him. And what does she say? My Oberon. What's the my there implied? Now it can mean mine. I own you. It can be that. It could also be mine, meaning connection to, relationship with, tied with, in a good sense of tying. Not S&M weird stuff, but bound to. My Oberon. He called her my Titania, my Oberon. What visions have I seen? There's the accidents. Wow. I have had some wild dreams. Methought I was enamored of an ass. I was in love with. Enamored means taken by. Totally smitten with. And he goes, look. Because at that point, Puck hasn't yet removed Bottom's head. So there's 3/4 of a man and then an ass's head on it. And she says, how came these things to pass? Oh, how mine eyes do loathe his visage now. In other words, in the fierce vexation of her dream, she was madly in love. Now, wide awake, seeing as she was wont to see, how did this happen? Does Oberon ever tell her? Not in the play. He never says, Okay, honey, here's how it worked. You wouldn't give me this little changeling boy, so I had to pull a fast one on you. I put love juice on your eyes so that you fell in love with this moron. And you doted over him. And in the meantime, you gave me the little changeling boy I wanted. And once you did that, then I put another juice on your eyes and it removed the love potion. So now you love me like you ought to. Because what's going to happen if he tells her that? Smack, you know. He just says, shh. That's what silence a while means. Shh. It was a dream. Don't worry about it. It wasn't real. Okay? So, they have music played and they kind of do a dance and stuff. They all leave. Meanwhile, who else is still asleep on the stage? Demetrius, Helena, Hermia, and Lysander. And Theseus comes in with Hippolyta and his followers. And we're told they come in to kind of celebrate the morning, to celebrate the day. What day is this? This is the fourth day. Okay? It's their wedding day. And he sees the sleepers. He says, what nymphs are these? Nymphs implies he sees the female sleepers. Males are never nymphs. Nymphs are always feminine. Okay? And Aegeus says, this is my daughter. And that's Lysander. And he immediately jumps to a conclusion. They ran off to the forest. And he says, and wait, here's Demetrius, and this is Helena. I wonder, I'm amazed. Why are they here together? Theseus, they rose up to observe the rite of May, and hearing our intent, came here in grace of our solemnity. Now, some people take that to mean they came here to celebrate May Day. But they couldn't be celebrating May Day. Why not? It's a midsummer night's dream. It's not May. It's the middle of summer. Okay? So when he says they came up to celebrate the rite of May, that's the rite of love. Why? Because today is the day Theseus and Hippolyta are getting married. And Theseus said, but wait a second. Isn't today the day Hermes is supposed to tell us her decision? Whether or not she'll marry Demetrius or swear the company of men forever? And Aegeus says, yeah, that's right, it is. So, wake him up. And they wake him up. And Lysander and Hermes say, yeah, we came off to the wood because we were going to get married. We were going to step outside Athenian law. And Aegeus says, that's it, enough. I beg the law. Notice, he begs the law upon Lysander's head, not upon Hermes. Kill him. Kill him. He was trying to steal my daughter. Okay? And Aegeus then addresses Demetrius. Demetrius, he was going to rob you of your wife. And Demetrius says, whoa, hold on there. Helen told me what their plans were. Fair Helen told me of their stealth, line 155. Of this their purpose hither to this wood, and I in fury hither followed them. Guys, I was mad as nails. I was going to come, and I was going to stop this. But my good Lord, I walk not, I know not. That's what walk means. I know not by what power, but by some power it is. My love to Hermia melted as the snow. Seems to me now as the remembrance of an idol god. Anybody know what the word god means? G-A-U-D. You've got a gloss. It's like a bauble, bling. Something to kind of fancy the eye. Something to draw attention. He says, Hermia was like that to me before. But now the object and pleasure of what? My eye. Helena. And we're back to Helena's speech. The eye can make beautiful what it looks upon. So, and he admits, I was betrothed to her. Now, earlier we were told he, quote unquote, made love to sweet Nadar's daughter. Now we're told they were engaged. Engaged. Before I saw Hermes. Okay? Theseus. Fair lovers, you are fortunately met. What does he mean by fortunately? If you have good fortune, what is it? Good luck. Okay? But in the older classical sense, fortune's a little different than luck. Because fortune is a goddess. And she spins a wheel. We have a game show named after this. The Wheel of Fortune. Okay? She spins this wheel. And as the wheel spins, your life either rises or falls. You want to be on this side of Fortune's wheel. You never want to get up here. See, we're going to see when we get to Hamlet. Hamlet and some of his friends are going to talk about fortune. And they're going to say, you know, on fortune, we're neither her cap up here, nor her foot. They're going to say, her privates we. That is, we're around fortune's privates. Her middle, okay? So, he says, you are fortunately met. That is, the goddess Fortune has kind of smiled on you. You're having what we today would call good luck. Something fortunate happens, you know. You leave your house 2 minutes later and find out later in the day, if you had left 2 minutes earlier, you probably would have been in a big accident because of something that happens on a major thoroughfare or something like that. That's good fortune not to have done that. So, he says, we'll hear more of this discourse anon, soon. Now, and he tells Aegeus, be quiet. I'm going to overrule you. Why? Because if fortune kind of dictates that Hermes should marry Lysander, I'm not going to get in fortune's way. I'm not going to kind of counteract fate, if you want. Okay? And fate and fortune are two different things. We'll talk about that when we get to Hamlet. So, he goes on and says what? There's going to be 3 weddings today. When we all go back to Athens and we go to the temple, not only will Hippolyta and I get married, but Hermia, you and Lysander will be married, and Demetrius, you and Helena will be married. Notice, have they talked about marriage? This is kind of an authorial decree. You will get married, you know. So, Theseus, Hippolyta, their train leave, and we have the 4 lovers. And what do they say? Am I seeing things right? Hermia, methinks I see these things with parted eye. And your gloss tells you improperly focused. Like, did what just happened really happen? My father was here, and the Duke, and get married. Wow. Fierce vexation of a dream. They leave. Who else is still on stage? Saw and Logs. Bottom is. Now Bottom wakes up. But Bottom wakes up transformed. He's back to being himself. And Bottom says, when he wakes up, he says lines from the play that they're about to produce. It's almost like everything that happened from when Bottom stepped off the stage, okay, when they were putting on the practice, the rehearsal, to just now didn't happen. Because when he first speaks, when my cue comes, he's thinking, when I go back on stage, when I come back in, and then he remembers, I've had a dream. And this is one of Bottom's great speeches. It's short, but it's one of his great speeches because it allows the character who plays Bottom to just go over the top, to just really ham it up. And you've got to have an actor who can really ham up this character. Okay? So he says, I've had this great dream. What does he say? I've had a most rare vision, line 198. I've had a dream past the wit of man to say what dream it was. Past the wit of man means past the intelligence of man to say what it was. So my dream was so amazing, so wonderful, it can't be put into words. And what does he then try to do in the very next sentence? Put it into words. That's what shows us Bottom's a moron. Okay? Man is but an ass if he go about to expound this dream. Well, Bottom is an ass. We saw that physically shown when his head gets transformed. Methought I was, methought I had, but man is but a patched fool if he will offer to say what methought I had. The eye of man hath not heard. Right? Eyes don't hear, ears hear. And what he does is he paraphrases St. Paul. When Paul says in one of his letters, the eye of man hath not seen, nor the ear of man hath heard, well, Bottom gets it all mixed up. And he says, I'm going to get Peter Quince to write this down, and we'll use it as a prologue for the play. Okay? Scene 2. We're back in Athens. We leave the wood aside for good. Okay? And we have the mechanicals, the tradesmen, putting on the rehearsal for their play, and Bottom shows up. Okay? Act 5. We're now at Athens. We're at Theseus' palace. And Hippolyta says, "'Tis strange, my Theseus, that these lovers speak of." That means what? What does she mean? It's strange. The thing that these lovers are talking about. Their dream, okay. What I'm getting at is, what does she mean by strange? Incredible. The incredible means literally unbelievable. You can't believe this. Okay? Why? Skip Theseus' speech for a moment, because we're going to come back to it. And look at what she says next. Yeah, but they all say the exact same thing. They all had the same dream? Can't be. Something happened. Now go back to Theseus' speech. This often gets overlooked. Okay? But this speech is really important. Because, and I could be entirely wrong here, but I don't think I am. I think Shakespeare is speaking through Theseus here. That is, Shakespeare is telling us what Shakespeare actually really thinks. More strange than true. That is, Theseus just says, in response to Hippolyta, yeah, it is strange. That is, it is incredible. It cannot be believed. It's not true. Okay? I never may believe these antic fables nor these fairy toys. Now, your spelling for that word that I pronounce antic is antique. But the word for both antic and antique was spelled the same in Shakespeare's day. Antique means really old. Antic means kind of out of your mind. So which is it? Is it a really old fable, or is it they're kind of out of their mind fable? Nor these fairy toys, stories about fairies. Theseus is saying, I don't believe in fairies. I don't believe in elves. Which is kind of interesting when you think about it. Because historically speaking, what is Theseus? He's a myth. He is an antique fable. He is a fairy story. He's not real. And he's saying, I don't believe fairy stories. I don't believe tales of elves and fairies and mythological beings. Okay? Lovers and madmen lovers, madmen, and he's going to throw in poets too. Lovers and madmen have such seething brains, such shaping fantasies, that apprehend more than cool reason ever comprehends. Okay? So let's take that apart. What does it mean to seethe? It's a verb. What do you do when you seethe something?
Like you're kind of filtering it like through like a kind of a mesh.
Close.
I know that's what it is with like material.
That's a sieve. S-I-E-V-E. Have any of you ever been seething mad?
Oh.
It's when your brain is boiling. Seething is boiling something. Okay? That's why he says they have such seething brains. Have any of you ever had a temperature before? You've had the flu and your temperature's gone up to like 103, 104. I think highest mine's been it's about 104.5. That's pretty young. What happens when your temperature rises that high? You hallucinate. Why? Because your brain is boiling. That's why you got to get that temperature under control. You got to get it back down, or you will literally kind of fry your brain. Okay? He says, lovers and madmen have such seething brains, such boiling brains, such shaping fantasies. Fantasy there means imaginations. So lovers and madmen have shaping fantasies, imaginations that give shape to things, that apprehend more than cool reason ever comprehends. Notice the juxtaposition. Seething brains, shaping fantasies, versus cool reason. Okay? And the shaping fantasies with the seething brains apprehend. What's that mean, to apprehend? When a cop apprehends a suspect. Gets it. It's literally to take hold of. Okay? So, those shaping fantasies apprehend things that he says cool reason never comprehends. They take hold of things that cool reason says, I don't get it. I don't understand it. It's not real. How did he begin? He began by saying, more strange than true. Why? Because Theseus is operating from cool reason. Why is reason cool? He doesn't mean cool like cool, man. He means cold. Why is reason described as cold? Why isn't it hot? Why isn't it passionate? What kind of crimes are committed in the heat of the moment? Crimes of passion. Why do we use that phrase, the heat of the moment? Because what does the person not do? A guy goes into his home. He comes home from work one day for lunch that he doesn't usually do. He finds his wife in bed with his best friend, and boom! That's a crime of passion. Because if the guy thought about it, if he'd left and then come back, probably wouldn't have done that. Might have divorced her, might have whatever. Probably wouldn't have killed them. Okay? It's a crime of passion. It's in the heat of the moment. It's not something that cool reason would do. Because cool reason would say, if I kill her, I'm going to prison. Because that's murder. So, cool reason doesn't comprehend, he's telling us, what fantasy, what imagination apprehends. The lunatic, that's the madman. The lover and the poet So now he throws in the poet. Are of imagination all compact. That is, they're all the same. They're all made of imagination. Okay? How so? One sees more devils than vast hell can hold. Who's that? Is that the lover? No. That's the lunatic. Because what does the lunatic, according to Theseus, see everywhere? Devils. He might not mean literal devils. He might mean spirits that I don't see, that I'm assuming, for the moment, you all have cool reason, you don't see. Okay? That's the madman. The lover, all as frantic, that is just as crazy, does what? Sees Helen's beauty in a brow of Egypt. Okay? When he says Helen's beauty, he's not referring to Helena. He's referring to Helen of Troy. Helen of Troy, according to the myth, was the most beautiful woman. The whole reason for the Trojan War was because Paris, who's an utter idiot, was challenged by the goddesses. Aphrodite, Juno, and I can't remember the third one. Who's the most beautiful? And he says Helen. And they're like, oh, you're going to pay for that. Okay? And that kind of is the impetus for the Trojan War. Okay? Helen's beauty in a brow of Egypt. I think it was in this class the other day I said. What was the Elizabethan conception of beauty? Whiteness. This kind of whiteness. Not this kind of whiteness. White, 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 white. Okay? Not even a shade of tan. So, he says, the lover, just as crazy as the lunatic, sees Helen's beauty in a brow of Egypt. What's a brow of Egypt? Where's Egypt? North Africa. That is, in a dark-skinned brow. In a dark-skinned woman. Okay? Little tidbit background. Shakespeare's 154 sonnets that I mentioned the other day, beginning around sonnet 126 to the end, those are generally about what's called the dark lady. Because the woman that is described from those sonnets to the end is dark of skin. Okay? And there was a famous woman in Shakespeare's day who was African. You can't call her African American because she wasn't American. African British, if you want, African English, England, whatever. Okay? But she was African. And she was well known. Some people think Shakespeare had an affair with her. Shakespeare, not the person within the persona within the sonnets. No evidence, etc., etc. Okay? So here the speaker says, the lover, who's crazy, sees beauty in a dark-skinned woman. Why is that crazy? Because the model is Queen Elizabeth. Which obviously means what? I'm not picking on anybody. It means you're not beautiful, and you're not beautiful, and you're not beautiful, and you're not. Because none of you are Queen Elizabeth. You don't have the white face and the red hair, and etc. So, the poet's eye, in a fine frenzy rolling, that is, he's as crazy as the other two, his eyes rolling because he doesn't see straight, doth glance from heaven to earth, from earth to heaven, and as imagination bodies forth the forms of things unknown, the poet's pen turns them to shapes and gives to airy nothing a local habitation and a name. Notice, Theseus spends the most time talking about which of the three kinds of people? A poet. Why? Shakespeare's a poet. This is poetry that he's writing. Yeah, it's drama, but it's written in poetic verse. Look at what he says again. The poet's eye go back to Hermes, we go back to Helena's speech. Seeing things. The poet's eye glances from heaven, that is from the skies, if you want, to the earth, that is from what is not seen to what is seen, and then from what is seen back to what is not seen, and does what? And as imagination bodies forth the forms of things unknown. What does he mean, the imagination bodies forth the forms of things unknown? How many of you have ever seen one of those? I mean a real one, not in a, or maybe you don't know what that is, but you do know what this is. I don't mean in a movie, in a picture, I mean a real one. No, you haven't. Because if you have, you're crazy. Why not?
They aren't real.
They're not real. And yet, as soon as I wrote that down, every one of you had in what is called your mind's eye, in your imagination, what that is, right? It's essentially a horse with a big long horn sticking off its snout. So where did that come from? Because some poet, a bazillion years ago, several thousand years ago, took the idea of a horn from something else and stuck it on a horse's head and said, a unicorn. That person bodied forth the shape, the form of something unknown. That is, prior to that first person coming up with that idea, nobody had an idea of a unicorn. Okay? J.R.R. Tolkien famously wrote in the summer of 1931, in a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. Nobody knew what a hobbit was. He didn't know what a hobbit was when he wrote that sentence. It took him several years to figure it all out. But now we have books and movies about hobbits, etc. We have hobbits referred to in popular culture. They have nothing to do with Tolkien's Middle-earth. We have people described as hobbits because they're short, etc. Okay? Something that only existed at one point in the mind of an author now has entered popular culture. We all know that thing. We're reading A Midsummer Night's Dream. Where did that originally all occur? In Shakespeare's mind. Shakespeare came up with this idea and wrote it all out, and it was bodied forth so that now we have actors who portray Theseus, Apollo, Aegeus, etc. And it turns them to shapes and gives to airy nothing. What's the airy nothing? I won't say this about you guys. It's what's up here. The airy nothing is what occurs in the imagination. Why is it airy nothing? Because what's up here doesn't physically exist until in a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. And it gives to airy nothing a local habitation, Athens, the wood, the Shire, Yoknapatawpha County, William Faulkner's mythological county in Mississippi. Okay? And a name. Such tricks hath strong imagination. Strong, powerful imagination. That, if it would but apprehend some joy, if the imagination would reach out and grasp, take hold of some joy. Notice that joy is not within the individual, it's kind of out there. Or in the night, it would apprehend some joy, it comprehends some bringer of that joy. And with that sentence, Shakespeare has just made A Midsummer, it actually occurs earlier, but with that sentence, Shakespeare has just made A Midsummer Night's Dream a deeply philosophical play. Because he's getting at ultimate reality. What is really real. Okay? Notice, if it would apprehend some joy, if the imagination can conceive of some joy, then it does what? It comprehends a bringer of that joy. That is, there's got to be something behind that idea of joy. There's got to be something that creates in the mind the idea of joy. I think it was Anselm, not positive. Anselm, a medieval philosopher, said, God is that which beyond which cannot be thought. That is, God is the highest thought humanity is capable of. And he used that as what's called an ontological proof. That's a proof of God's existence. We can't think of anything higher than God. Can't think of anything beyond God, greater than God. Fate doesn't work. Fate's not beyond God. It's not higher than God in the kind of classical thought. So, those two lines just make this all deeply philosophical. And then Shakespeare brings it right back down to earth. And he brings it back down to earth like for an 8-year-old. Maybe you've never experienced what he says in the next two lines. I sure as hell did. Or in the night, imagining some fear, how easy is a bush, supposed a bear. Okay, now maybe you didn't grow up where there are bears nearby. I didn't. But what's he mean? In the night, notice. In the night, imagining a fear. You see a bush and you suppose, you put upon that bush what? The idea of a bear. Did any of you, when you were little, go to sleep at night and see something in your room when it was dark, after the lights were out, and you kind of started to think, wait, what is that? I did. Right? A robe misplaced or a jacket misplaced so that it looks like a figure. Or, depending on what kind of house, apartment, whatever you live, branches brushing across a window or the wall. And so you hear this. And what can the imagination do? You're not quite asleep. You're not fully awake. And you hear, and it sounds like somebody scratching on a door. That's what he's getting at. The imagination kind of jumps. Doesn't help with me. I grew up in what's now called Silicon Valley, San Jose. When I was a little kid, beginning around 1968, there was a crazy guy 20, 30 miles away named the Zodiac Killer. And I literally remember going to bed thinking the Zodiac Killer was going to sneak in and, kidnap me. Okay? Just turned out I didn't have to worry about the Zodiac Killer. I had to worry about a guy who lived 4 doors down. Look up the name. Leonard Lake. One of the most prolific serial killers in California history. He lived 4 doors down from me. Didn't know it at the time. Didn't know he was a serial murderer at the time. Okay? So, that's when Hippolyta says, in response to what Theseus says, yeah, but they all had the same dream. That is, okay. I like your theory about the imagination and how the imagination can create things. But all of their imaginations all created the exact same images? What's she saying? There's got to be something to this. So, the lovers come in. Okay? And they start to chit-chat and stuff. And Philostrate comes in. And Philostrate tells Theseus kind of, what kind of revels we have prepared. And he hands him a sheet, and Theseus starts to read down, and he's like, no, I don't want to hear, no. And then he gets to one. Wait a second, what about this one? Line 56. A tedious, brief scene of young Pyramus and his love Thisbe. Very tragical mirth. Merry and tragical, tedious and brief. What's his point? Tedious means it takes a lot of time. It can't be brief if it's tedious. Tragical means it's sad. Mirth means it's happy. It can't be both tragical and mirthful. He says, what is this? A play there is, my lord, some 10 words long. The play is 10 words, which is as brief as I have known a play, but by 10 words, my lord, too long. You don't want this one. This is really bad. Okay? Who's doing it? Hard-handed men that work in Athens. That is, men with calluses on their hands, because they work with their hands day in and day out, which never labored in their minds till now. That is, they're not the sharpest, knives in the box. Yep, that's the one we want. No, that's the one I want. I will hear that play, Theseus says. Why? Look at line 82. I will hear that play, for never anything can be amiss when simpleness and duty tender it. Okay? He says, it can't go wrong if simpleness, and you've got a gloss down there, simplicity, and duty, their sense of duty, their sense of obligation to Theseus, are rendering it. What's he mean? I'm assuming none of you, maybe some of you do, have kids. At some point, probably most of you will have kids. And you'll have a 2-year-old who's not very good at drawing come up to you with a sheet of paper and a bunch of different colors, just scribble all over it. And that child will say, look, Mommy, look, Daddy. And you'll go, nice. It's like I've got a little Jackson Pollock, just scattering paint everywhere. It doesn't look like anything. And the child will say, this is Spot, the dog. And you're like, no, a dog has 4 legs, not 25. And a dog has 2 eyes, not 6. And duty, the child's sense of obligation to the parent, and simplicity. Child's not a Rembrandt, doesn't know any better. So he says, it can't go wrong if those are the motivations behind what's being done. Okay? Hippolyta, no. I don't want to see wretchedness overcharged. What does she mean by wretchedness? Things base and vile. These people are wretched. They're low-life scum. No. And he says, you won't see anything like that. But he says they can't do this. Look at Theseus' response. What Theseus says here is essentially the essence, at least I would say, of the idea of honor or respect. She says, Hippolyta, top of 1593, he says they can do nothing in this kind. They can't do this play. The kind are we to give them thanks for nothing. The kinder, the gentler we will be to give them thanks for their nothing. Here's what he means. Our sport, that is our pleasure, shall be to take what they mistake. We're going to take as performed what they don't perform. We're going to take as given what they don't give. We're going to take as done what they intend, not their completion. And what poor duty cannot do, noble respect takes it in might, not merit. So when that child hands you that drawing or painting, you take it and go, oh man, that's beautiful. Even though it's ugly. All right? Where I have come, great clerks have purposed to greet with premeditated welcome. Where I have seen them shiver and look pale, make periods in the midst of sentences, throttle their practiced accent in their fears, and in conclusion dumbly have broke off, not paying me a welcome. Trust me, sweet, Out of this silence, yet I picked a welcome. What's he talking about? He's like the president. He's saying, where I have come, clerks, that is, people who were sent out to welcome me, have come out and they've had a great speech prepared. And they've looked at me and they got all tongue-tied. And they couldn't say anything right. He says, and yet, out of that, I picked a welcome. Similarly, he says, and in the modesty of fearful duty, I read as much from the rattling tongue of saucy and audacious eloquence. Love, therefore, and tongue-tied simplicity, in least, that is, in the least, speak most. Love. What they've attempted to do is show love to me. He's saying, bottom, quince, snug, flute, starveling, they're trying to show their love and respect towards us. We can do the same towards them. Okay? So, they come out, and Peter Quince delivers his prologue. And the prologue is printed according to how it ought to be read. See, in Shakespeare's day, punctuation is oratorical. It's not grammatical necessarily. That is, you use things like commas and periods to indicate pauses. Sometimes long pauses. But that's not the way Peter Quince delivers it. Here's how it should be delivered. Hold on, I may have just completely gotten that backwards. Yeah, I did. It's printed the way he delivers it. It's not printed with its punctuation marks the way it should be delivered. Okay, because notice just the first line. If we offend, it is with our good will. What does that mean? We intend to offend you. That's what that literally means. That's not what he intends to convey. He intends to convey this. If we offend, it is with our good will that you should think we come not to offend. Notice what I just did. I took that period off after the will because it's not supposed to be there. That's not what he is intending to say. But with goodwill to show our simple skill, that is the true beginning of our end. Okay? So, that's why Theseus says, this fellow doth not stand upon points. Points there means marks of punctuation. He doesn't know how to punctuate. He doesn't know how to correctly, oratorically, or rhetorically read this. Okay? So we get the rest of the prologue, and what do we see in the play within the play? Okay? It's the play of Hermes and Thisbe, right? Who's Hermes?
Bottom.
Bottom is the character who plays him. What is he? He's a lover. Right? What's Thisbe? The person he loves. Okay? This is an old story, by the way. Shakespeare doesn't invent this. It's as old as the stories of Theseus. And in the story of Pyramus and Thisbe, they are separated. They love each other, but they're separated by their families. Kind of like the Montagues and Capulets. It's like Romeo and Juliet all over again. And what do? It is Romeo and Juliet. Well, within the course of the play, Pyramus thinks Thisbe's been killed by a lion because he finds her shawl and it's soaked in blood. Because he thinks his lover is dead, what does he do? I can't live anymore. And he kills himself. Thisbe comes back out. She sees her lover dead. He's dead. And what does she think? I can't live anymore without him. She pulls the knife out of him and she stabs herself. And they both die. Why is this here? Okay, let me back up. How do we know they don't do this well? Sounds like a tragedy, right? How do we know they don't make it a tragedy. Why do we know this is funny as all hell? Because Pyramus says, I will take this sword, and in my pap, my left pap, thus I die. Ugh, and he stabs himself. And he goes, thus. Pretty much one stab to the heart, you're gone. You don't keep doing it. And you then don't keep going, oh, I die, there goes my soul. I mean, he just hams it up, okay? So Thisbe comes out, and then she does the same thing, okay? Because they don't understand this is meant to be sorrowful, okay? They're hamming it up. So they get these great lines and stuff, and then they're supposed to be dead on the stage. And Theseus says, moonshine and lion are left to bury the dead. Page 1599, line 329. Demetrius, I and wall too. And bottom gets up from the stage. He breaks what's called the fourth wall. That wall of, can you imagine this is really happening? He totally demolishes that, because by getting up off the stage, what's happened? Pyramus has been resurrected. And he says, no, I assure you, the wall is down, that part of their fathers. Will it please you to see the apple? And they're like, no more, please, no more. Okay? So, Theseus says, no, let's dance. They dance. And then they all exit. And as they're all exiting through one door, Puck comes out another door. Okay? Carrying a broom. And he starts to sweep. It says, now the hungry lion roars, and the wolf behowls the moon, whilst the heavy plowman snores, all with weary task for doom. That is, wild animals are out doing their stuff, and humans, they're inside asleep. Now the wasted brands do glow, whilst the screech owl screeching loud puts the wretch that lies in woe in remembrance of a shroud. Now it is the time of night that the graves all gaping wide. This is popular Elizabethan kind of mythology, that at midnight the graves open and the dead arise, which is why you should be inside, tucked in bed, Everyone lets forth this bride in the churchway paths to guide. That is to kind of go off towards the church, the dead. And we fairies that do run by the triple Hecate's team from the presence of the sun, following darkness like a dream, now are frolic. Not a mouse shall disturb, that is, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. That's where St. Clement More gets it from. So, he says, and I am sent with a broom before. I'm kind of cleaning up. I'm preparing the way. And who comes out? All the fairies. For what purpose? What are they going to do? They're going to go throughout the house, Oberon tells us, and they're going to bless these marriages. Oberon and Titania are going to bless Theseus and Hippolyta. How are they going to bless them? Are they going to say, in the name of Jesus the Christ, blah, blah? No. They're going to bless them so that they won't have any misshapen, any deformed children. I mean, we actually get hair lip referred to. Okay? No cleft palates, etc. Their children are going to be beautiful. They're going to be gorgeous. They're going to be wonderful. Okay? And the other fairies are going to go into Lysander and Hermes' bedroom and bless them, and into Demetrius and Helena's bedroom and bless them. Okay? So we hear all that, and then they all leave, and Puck is left alone on the stage. And he comes out as Puck, and he comes right out to the edge. He should. Comes right out to the edge of the stage. He does this. He addresses the audience. If we shadows have offended. Well, earlier in the play, he referred to Oberon as king of shadows. When do fairies have their sway at night, in the shadows. But he says, if we shadows have offended, why does he call himself and everybody else who had been on the stage shadows? What are shadows? You're the image cast by something real. But notice, the shadow isn't real itself. It's the thing, the substantial thing that the light shines behind that creates the shadow. The shadow isn't something substantial of itself. It is pure accidents, pure appearance. The shadow has no real substance. Okay? So if we shadows, if we things with no substance, no real reality, have offended, think this and all is mended. Just think this. Just hold this one thought. That you have but slumbered here while these visions did appear. In other words, this was your Midsummer Night's Dream. See, within the play, it's Hermia and Lysander's and Demetrius's and Helena's dream. In this weak and idle theme. Does he tell us what the weak and idle theme is? Here, theme just means kind of story. No more yielding, but a dream. That is, it doesn't have any more impact on you than a dream does. Gentles do not reprehend. Gentles, those are the people in the galleries, in the seats. Right? Groundlings are the people down here in the yard. So gentles do not reprehend us, don't hold us to account. If you pardon, we will mend. We'll fix it. And as I am an honest puck, if we have unearned luck now to escape the serpent's tongue. What's the serpent's tongue? Boo, hiss. If we have unearned luck, that is, he's saying, we don't deserve this. We don't deserve to escape the boos and hisses. Okay? Now to escape the serpent's tongue, we will make amends ere long. How ere long? Ere there means before. We will make amends before long. How? Well, if it is what he said it was, if this is just a vision that did appear while you slumbered here, then what's going to happen before long? As you leave, go about your daily life, okay? What's going to happen to this vision? It's going to disappear. That's how the amends will be made. Else the puck a liar call. So good night unto you all. Give me your hands if we be friends, and Robin shall restore amends. What's he saying? Give me your hands. He's begging for applause. He said, come on, guys. Come on, you enjoyed this. You know you did. Give us some applause. Now, Shakespeare doesn't do this in all of his plays. There's only a few that actually have an epilogue like this. Where he's going, come on, you liked it. Show me. Right? And usually before he even says that line, the audience is going crazy. If it's a good production. Okay? So, before we have the quiz, what is the idle theme? I got to get all this out. It's not a question on the quiz. It's not a question I'm going to ask you to write anything about. I'm just curious, what is the idle theme? What's the purpose for the play? If you remember, I think it was the first day of class, I mentioned Horace, and Horace says the purpose of literature, the purpose of poetry, is to please and delight. To delight and to teach. I am one of those who does think Shakespeare does want to teach. So what is it he's trying to teach? That fathers should get out of the way of their daughters when they want to marry somebody? Yeah, maybe. And that could have been, Shakespeare personally. Okay, Susanna, I know you want to marry me. Possible. Okay, so put everything away. Quiz is 10 points.